I'm Autumn Lockett.
And this is Mitch Randall.
And you're listening to Good Faith Weekly.
Welcome to this episode of Good Faith Weekly. And this week, Autumn and I are going to catch up, going to talk a little bit about the passing of my grandfather from COVID-19. And then later on in the pod, we've got a very special guest with us, Leanne Chambliss, all the way from Auburn, Alabama. So stay tuned. Autumn, how are you doing this week?
We're doing okay. I know your family is in mourning today, so we're thinking of you.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it has been a difficult week for us. As I mentioned, I think last week on the pod, my family has been struck by COVID-19 on 3 occasions. One was my grandfather, who contracted a little over a couple of weeks ago, and also my mom and dad. And my mom and dad seem to be doing well. My mom is not recovering as quickly as my father. But unfortunately, my grandfather succumbed to complications due directly from COVID-19 and passed away last Thursday. I wrote a tribute to him at goodfaithmedia.org on Tuesday of this week. He was most assuredly the greatest man that I ever met. A child of the Depression, born in 1926 along with his siblings, and was moved around from Texas to Alabama and Oklahoma. They knew poverty like no one has ever known it, especially during that time period. There were days, I remember him telling us stories, there were days where he and his siblings would go without food. His dad would hire him out in Alabama, he and his brothers and sisters, to pick cotton all day. And after a day of picking cotton in the sweltering heat of Alabama, their knuckles bloody from pulling cotton from the husk, the prickly husk of the cotton stalk, their father would show up and get their pay, and they would never see any of it. And he would use that to go moonshine. He was also a bootlegger in Alabama, and my grandfather talked about going and checking those stills and all of the difficulties that came from living in such a poverty-stricken era and an area. So, he overcame that. He made a decision early on in life, after dropping out of school in the 7th grade, to make certain that his family would never go hungry, because that was the one goal he felt like if he could put food in the belly of his children and provide them with a good education that he did not receive, then they could achieve anything. And he did that. He and my grandmother had 3 children in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He worked 3 jobs, one as a welder for Tulsa Public Schools. Immediately after getting off of that job, he would go to Earl Vincent's garage to work on cars, especially with air conditioning units. And then, of course, on the weekends, he would help fix cars from neighbors and friends who would bring them to them for some extra income. He just made sacrifice after sacrifice to make certain that his family would not go hungry and be given opportunities that he was not given. And he did. More than anybody in my life, Herbert Maxwell Sheffield changed the trajectory of our family. And he was a remarkable man, and he's going to be missed.
Absolutely. It was a beautiful tribute. If you haven't had a chance to read it, it's Mitch's article is available on Good Faith Media under the latest articles link. And what I really loved about your article was how much your grandfather really favored red hats.
And not that kind of red hat. My grandfather was he was a yellow dog Democrat. As in fact, he had it was funny, he had a picture of FDR signing the Social Security Act framed in his den. And anytime one of his children or son-in-laws would retire, he would take a picture of himself holding FDR signing that Social Security Act and send it to them. He was a diehard Democrat to his last days.
Yeah, but that red hat so your grandma could
recognize him. Yeah, it was a beautiful story. My grandfather was coming through Oklahoma one time and stopped here to see us, and we had lunch together, and he asked if I could take him to a sporting goods hat because he needed a brand new red hat. I said, sure, Granddad, I'd be happy to do so. And he was a diehard Oklahoma Sooners fan. So we went to the local Sooner shop and we walked to
Balfour?
do what?
Balfour on campus? Sam's Corner?
I think exactly that's where we went to, matter of fact. And so if you've ever been there here in Oklahoma, in Norman, there is a wall that is covered with hats. And so I was pointing all these cool hats out to my grandfather. Said, hey, here's one with a red bill and white top. Here's one with a red top and a white bill. And then there was a gray one that I really liked. And so I was trying to show him all of these variety of hats. And he was just emphatic. No, it has to be a red hat. And I said, okay, if you don't mind me asking, Granddad, why a red hat? And then he told me. He said that he would visit my grandmother in the memory care unit of her nursing home each and every day back in Missouri. And with her mind dwindling as it was, he said every time he would walk down the hall and in the fog of her memory, my grandmother would look up, and when she saw the kind man with the red hat, she would smile. And so he had to have a red hat.
Yeah.
And so I said, Granddad, well, you don't need one red hat. You need two. Here, let's go get these two red hats. So it was just a beautiful story about his compassion and his love for my grandmother, but just really embodied who he was. And he's going to be sorely missed. And what aggravates me and angers me during this time of mourning for our family is that he didn't have to die. I've been talking to my uncle and my mom and dad, and that, he was 94 years old and lived a rich life, but it was this horrible virus that took him down. Mm-hmm. And it did not have to happen. If we had people in leadership that gave a damn about other people, that followed scientists instead of their own political agendas, then I have no doubt my grandfather would still be alive today. But because of their unwillingness and obstinance and selfishness not to do the right thing, my family, my uncle and aunt and their son are gathering in a cemetery today without any other family to bury the greatest man that I ever met. So I am sad, I am heartbroken, and I am angry. And as we go into these holiday seasons, if you are still considering gathering with more than your immediate family, please, I beg you, don't do it. Please take precautions, wear your mask, stay social distance, because this virus will kill one of your family members if you don't.
And you just can't predict. You just don't know.
You can't. I mean, we've been very fortunate over the last 9 months, and in the last 3 weeks, 3 of my family members who are extremely close to me contracted the disease. And so it's, you're absolutely right. You can't predict it.
No. In fact, on our podcast last week, as I was editing it, you were talking, your grandpa was up, he was doing laundry, mm-hmm. he was doing fine. Yeah. And it's really unpredictable. It really so we just have to listen to the scientists.
Absolutely. Well, as dark of a day it is for me and my family, and as dark a day as it is for our country and around the world as COVID-19 numbers continue to escalate, there is somebody who is trying to share a little light into the world through her songs. And coming up, we've got a wonderful interview with artist Leanne Chambliss from Auburn, Alabama. Leanne, since COVID began to take over everybody's lives and everybody quarantining in their house, decided as a musician she was going to write a little song every day and share it on social media. And so she's going to talk about why she did that. And then also we get to be blessed by her talents as she sings a couple of those songs with us on air. So stay tuned for our interview with Leanne Chambliss. Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. And during this Thanksgiving week, we've got a very special guest with us. Leanne Armstrong is a singer-songwriter living in Auburn, Alabama. In addition to writing and performing songs, Leanne previously worked in student ministry. Over the course of the pandemic, Leanne has made a decision to start writing a song a day, performing it, and posting it on Facebook. Her sound has a folksy vibe, but more importantly, she's got some very powerful and meaningful lyrics. Leanne Armstrong, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with y'all.
Well, Leanne, before we jump into the interview and Autumn starts firing questions at you, one of the things that we like to ask each one of our guests during this pandemic is, how are you? How is your family? Everybody feeling okay? Have you anybody that you are close to contracted the virus?
I think my family is well.
Good.
We're all managing well. I have a daughter who is a nurse in Chattanooga. She's well. Her husband is well. I have a daughter and son-in-law in Boston. Mm-hmm. Of course, Boston was one of the early hot spots, so they are very used to hunkering down. I have a son and daughter-in-law who are expecting a baby in a little bit in Charlottesville.
Okay.
And they are very in the groove of kind of hunkering down and staying to themselves. My parents live here in Auburn, and they are very good at wearing masks and staying to themselves. And we're all pretty good at covering up our mouths and noses and staying to ourselves and just waving at people from afar.
That's good. Well, as Dr. Fauci said, I think last night, what we need to be not doing, and that is sharing air. None of us need to be sharing air to stay safe. So I'm glad you and your family are doing well and are healthy during this time of pandemic.
Thank you.
So, Leanne, we love this idea of posting songs. You are in great company. Andrew Lloyd Webber has been doing this, Rufus Wainwright. Carol
wow.
King did it
and
too.
Leanne Armstrong.
And Leanne Armstrong. That's right. Exactly. So music is just such a solace for so many people. Tell us a little bit about what made you decide to start writing, performing, and posting a song each day.
Well, I have written before, not at this pace, obviously. I had back in maybe February, time is so strange this year. I had written a bit of comedy into a song with verses about Rudy Giuliani and the primary season.
Oh, wow.
And I'd shared it with a few friends. And when coronavirus began to dominate the news, I added a verse about coronavirus and put that out kind of wide on Facebook. Its chorus, the chorus of the song was based on a friend's common lament that there was not enough wine in the world. So that was kind of the first song I put out. And the reception was good for that song. So I wrote the next day a more kind of comforting, prayerful song, and I shared that. And an acquaintance from high school who was journeying through chemotherapy, and she was having to do it solo because of the quarantine, commented that having a new song to cheer her up each day would help her. So I figured I could sustain a new song a day for like 2 weeks, right? And that was mid-March. And here we are.
Well,
we're still quarantining. We're still staying separated. And I don't know how long it'll last, but the process of the daily rhythm of writing and recording and connecting with people that way, since I'm in a one-person household, has become sustaining for me also.
Oh, I bet. Well, it is a definitely lovely idea. And, I've been so inspired by it. I shared with the staff the other day that I thought I would start writing a sermon a day and delivering it a day. And
yes.
Well, the staff didn't think so.
I've asked him to please not go ahead and do that.
I would listen.
Oh, you're so sweet. You're much nicer than our staff is. Well, Leanne, obviously you are a person of faith, and in your lyrics and your music, that certainly plays a part. Tell us a little bit about how your faith does influence your writing, and how you come up with some of the ideas that you do?
Well, I feel like my spirituality is inseparable from my real life. That's air quotes.
I love that.
Anybody who spends time talking to me will eventually be drawn into a conversation on the radical Jesus breaking in, on the thread of our current events, or the breath of spirit, comforting or energizing. And just like it's inseparable from my life, my spirituality is likely to show itself in either typical or atypical moments in my songs. So God shows up in a paraphrase of, say, the week's lectionary reading, or a Maundy Thursday song about Jesus longing for his friends not to abandon him, to just stay. But it also shows up, say, in a song about Toomer's Corner, which is the center of Auburn activity, and drunk football fans, or making sure your nose doesn't peek out over your mask, or what's in your quarantine pantry, because God shows up in every little gritty bit of life. So whatever my song is about that day, God is likely to just pop up someplace in that song, because that's how my life is.
Yeah. And I love just and I don't mean this is an insult by any means, but the simplicity of your songs and your lyrics are extremely powerful, because you're talking and you're singing about everyday occurrences and what everybody is experiencing during these days of pandemic. So in that simplicity, there's a lot of complexity, but also a lot of beauty, a lot of suffering as well. And you connect with people who are suffering behind closed doors. And it's just really, really wonderful. So well done.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
You mentioned your friend with cancer who's going through chemo. Can you tell us about some other feedback you've received about your music?
I can't. I get all kinds of feedback. I feel pretty fortunate that I haven't received any really negative feedback, because my settings are set to public on both Instagram and Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep expecting to get really slammed for something that I write, and I haven't yet. I do have to go through and sort out a few on Instagram, kissy faces from gentlemen that are probably in Russia someplace. But I don't.
I'm getting those all the time, Leanne. I understand what you're talking about.
No, I don't get any comments that are like, this, this is unbiblical or anything like that. Maybe those people have learned to scroll on by, but I get, everything from just the heart emoji to thank yous to deep spiritual discussions to policy discussions that I am in no way qualified to participate. And I say that.
Neither of most of our politicians, Leanne. It doesn't
right. No, it's true. It's true. I've been
and
told
some of our preachers.
Pretty, I've been told I look pretty in that yellow shirt. Someone likes it when I smile. Here, if I ever leave out my kind of signature sign off, which is check on your people, see you tomorrow. I always get a comment on that, to the point that sometimes I have to record a video of that and send it to that person.
Wow.
Who commented.
Sure.
I'm always honored when my songs are shared on someone else's page, like they'll share it and say, everybody listen to this song. I've been tickled by a couple of covers of my songs that people have done
nice.
On their Facebook pages. They've, interpreted them, a lot better musicians than me. Sometimes somebody took my song and put it into a totally different, like, hard rock style one time.
Wow.
And it's very fun to hear somebody take something and run with it like that. But all kinds of feedback, and it's just nice that that connections are made, because
Sure.
feedback means someone has connected with your song. So that's the whole point, really.
Yeah, and speaking of connectedness, I mean, that's something that music has done throughout history. There's something very emotional about it. It spawns an emotional reaction when you listen to it. And so when I think about moments in history, I mean, music has often interpreted those moments for people in society. I mean, I think of the music of the Reformation that brought theology to life in Europe for many people as they used music from the pubs to teach theology. The music from the 1960s in this country ushered in a social revolution. And now we find ourselves almost in the entirety of a full year under pandemic. How do you think music, in a general sense, and for you more specifically, how do you think music is interpreting this moment for us?
I think, like the music of those other significant moments in time, and I'm not calling them movements, because I wouldn't call the pandemic part of this time a movement, although I would call this social justice.
Yeah, there's this racial justice movement
Right.
that is paralleling this pandemic, which is another caveat to this strange world we live in right now.
Right. And I was looking, as have been looking back through my songs, they kind of fall into the categories of the beginning being pandemic related songs, and have moved into social justice oriented songs. So I wouldn't call them a movement, but more a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So those significant moments, the Reformation moment, the civil rights moment, which we know stretched much longer than that, but the best, deepest music of any moment preserves the moment, it interprets the moment, and the best music shapes the moment. So it not only is a photograph of the moment, but it actually can change the moment. And I'm definitely not claiming that my music is the best or the deepest of this moment, but I certainly hope that it contains little instants where it might preserve or interpret the moment. And if I'm really, really on my game in any given day, there might be sparks of time where it might shape the moment for one person who hears it. It might create a place where a person connects to the moment in a way they hadn't before. The music of this moment, I hope, can help people rise to the challenge of this moment. And that the art and music that comes from here, I hope, will reflect a changed world. There's so much that needs to change. And I hope when we look back on this time, like we look back on the civil rights movement, that the music and the art that comes from this time will actually show a world that's changing. It's hard to sit in it right now and say the world's changing. I hope when we look back, we'll see that change.
I love that. Preserve, interpret, and shape. That's what music is doing right now. And it's done it throughout the history. So I love that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
So, Leanne, you have graciously agreed to play a song for us. Can you tell us?
I think it's going to be two songs now.
Yeah, I'm going to pull a fast one on you and play two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bonus track.
And the reason is I wanted to play a typical daily song. And the typical daily song is one that kind of an idea pops into my mind while I'm doing my everyday whatever I do. So this first little song is called Signs. And it's not like signs from God. It's like signs that you see by the side of the road when you're driving along. So it uses a little humor. It uses familiar landmarks in Auburn, which is signs that people put out by the side of the road that you see when you're driving down the road. But it uses the signs to make a point about personal character. I sometimes use my songs just for fun, and sometimes I use my songs to poke a little bit and try and get a little lesson in there. This is one of those, maybe. The second song is St. Columba's Prayer, and it's a paraphrase of an ancient prayer about a lonely sojourner. The reason I include this one is that it feels very right about now, because many of us are kind of journeying toward holidays around tables that we feel like are sparsely populated. I know people are struggling with this. Number one, they're struggling to do the right thing and keep those tables sparsely populated. Number two, they're struggling with the loneliness that comes from not seeing the faces around the table and the crowds around the table that they're wanting to see. And so I'm hoping that this song maybe can be a reminder that safe in God's hand, we're never alone. So the first one is Signs. The second one, St. Columba's Prayer.
Love it.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Auburn, Alabama, Leanne Armstrong.
Store for essential supplies. It was then that I noticed the signs. Had I been driving right by them before, or were they new signs of the times? Right by a sign that says, "Don't you give up," is one that says, "Keep off the grass." Seeing no signs by the side of the road seemed more than a contrast in class. Sign, sign, everywhere a sign, walking out the scenery, breaking my mind. Do this, don't do that, can't you read the sign? And I think that we may all have a choice to make. We could worry about the fescue, or be that don't give up guy with the crap for grass lawn, ride off to somebody's rescue. Be that don't give up guy with the crap for grass lawn, ride off to somebody's rescue.
Yay!
Love.
Loved it, loved it, loved it. Oh my goodness, that was so lovely. And now another tune from Leanne Armstrong.
Be a bright flame before me, a guiding star o'er me, a smooth path below me, a shepherd to show. From morning to even, from there into memory, morning to even, from there, you know, my journey is lonely, but for your presence only. What gloom shall I fear when I sense you are near? You Lord of sun and night sky beyond, Lord of sun and night sky beyond, more accompanied, safe in your hand, than even when crowds used to gather and stand. And so shall it be, so it ever has been. Here in your presence,
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, Leanne, we've got one last question before we let you go, and Autumn always has the pleasure of asking our guests the final word.
Yes. So at Good Faith Media, our tagline is "There's more to tell." After hearing your beautiful songs and hearing sort of your heart behind writing them, can you tell us a little bit about your own more to tell?
I think my more to tell would be that I have found life to be about instance of connection. And that those instances happen face to face, that they happen electronically, that they happen through written communication, and that we should not let those instances go to waste. We should never discount the possibility that the sacred will show itself in one of those instances of connection. And it will never be the one that we assume it will. So we have to watch all the time, for the holy to break out into the midst of everyday life.
I love that. You are indeed a priest and a prophet. Thank you so much for spending time with us during this Thanksgiving holiday. We wish you and your family the very best. We hope that everybody remains safe as well as healthy there in Auburn, Alabama. If you want to know more about Leanne and listen to her daily tunes, you can visit her Facebook page at facebook.com/Leanne.Armstrong. Make certain to give her a listen. She's got a public site and just a beautiful, beautiful spirit. Leanne, thank you so much for being with us at Good Faith Weekly.
Thank you, Mitch. And thank you, Autumn. I appreciate y'all letting me be with you. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
And to our listeners, we want to thank you for tuning in this Thanksgiving week. Wherever you are, we hope that you are staying safe and healthy, and we hope that you have a wonderful holiday with your family members who are in your house. And remember, as always, keep living good faith.